Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right. We're talking about The Mist. The Mist, written and directed by Frank Darabont, based on the book by Stephen King, also titled The Mist. Now, there's nothing that interesting about how this movie was made, other than the fact that the story closely follows the book, but Frank decided to rewrite the ending, and Stephen King actually liked the ending of the movie more than his own book. Alright, let's just jump right into the 10 essential elements of a movie, starting with plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? Yes, there's nothing about this movie that takes you out of it. There's no major plot holes. It follows a pretty simple story arc, and there's nothing crazy. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? Yes and no. The main story behind the movie is very interesting. The thought of opening up a portal to another world, allowing creatures in that we don't understand and could be potentially extremely dangerous. That is scary. That is cool. That is a great concept. However, the movie is only half about that. The other half of the movie is just about human nature and what do humans do when you put them into a tight space and scare the crap out of them. And to me, they needed to weigh more on the actual monster aspect of the movie, which is the best part. Third is theme. What message or truth is a movie trying to convey? Now, I kind of talked about this a little. It's really about peeling back the way that society makes us act, and if we were all scared, how each human would react. How every person goes back to an animal instinct of some kind. And that's really what this movie is trying to explore, which is somewhat of an interesting premise. The only problem I have with it is I just think that the other side of the movie was cooler than the theme that they were trying to explore. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the dialogue. There's nothing that blows me out of the water. There's nothing that makes me really think about a conversation that was made in the movie that was just outstanding. They talk like real people. There's no conversations that make you think, oh, this is a movie. They all seem fairly real. And it is kind of hard to judge because these are kind of extraordinary circumstances, but there's nothing that takes you out of it. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, this is kind of an interesting part of the movie because the main character, David, played by Thomas Jane, is just okay. I think there was definitely moments that this character could have been elevated by another actor. He just doesn't have that large of a range of emotion, and so you just don't sympathize with the character at all. You don't really get this feeling that he's a person with a lot of emotions, a complex background, a whole history. He's just very, very bland. The only reason you even sympathize with him in the first place is just because he has a son. But the acting in this movie is elevated so much by supporting cast. There's so many other actresses and actors that do such a good job with smaller roles in this movie. One I'd like to point out specifically is Marcia Harden, who plays Miss Cormandy. Oh my gosh, you hate this woman. She does such a good job at playing a character that you do not like. Now, every scene she's in, she steals the show. She is always the center of attention no matter how many people are on the screen. She does such a good job. And I'd also like to point out Melissa McBride, who has a very tiny role in the movie, but the one scene she does have, I think she does one of the best jobs at portraying emotion in the entire movie. It's the one part of the movie where somebody was talking and it really almost got me choked up. Six is cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotions? Yes and no. My big no with this movie is I hate the way it was filmed. I hate the camera work in this movie. I don't know why they chose to do the camera work they did. There's a lot of scenes that are zoomed in, kind of like a documentary, and when people are walking, the camera is moving like somebody is holding it. I hate it. I hated it the whole time. It kept pulling me out of the story and pulling me out of the movie. It kept making me think, why does it seem like somebody's holding a camera? I mean, there's a reason that a film that you need to be embedded in and it doesn't have an explanation for why somebody would be holding a camera doesn't shake when somebody's moving. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it really irritated me throughout the entire movie. However, the mist aspect of the movie was really good. They did a great job with it. The mist is creepy. They did a nice thick mist, and all the monsters were somewhat revealed, somewhat not. I really enjoyed that. I think they did a good job of giving you some substance to pull from and then letting your imagination do the rest. I would say my favorite scene, hands down, of the movie is the part where they tie the rope to the biker and he walks out, and then the rope all of a sudden starts going extremely fast and they're burning their hands, and then it just drops and they start pulling it in and it just starts turning red. The atmosphere of that scene was so good. You didn't know what got this guy, you didn't know what was out there, but it terrified you. I mean, the rope went 200 feet out and then raised up to the top of the door. I mean, immediately you have to assume this thing is gigantic. And then when they pulled it back all the way, it's only half of the dude there. It's just his legs. I mean, that is just super creepy. It was a great scene. I love it. I'll watch it a million times. Seventh is editing. This is all about the pacing of the movie. Now, I don't really have any problems with the pacing of the movie. It's a little bit of a long movie. It's about 2 hours and 6 minutes, but I think the pacing is pretty good. They kind of move from one subject to another, one problem to another fairly nicely. I don't really have any problems with the editing. I think it was a pretty good runtime. Eighth is soundtrack. Now, soundtrack is lacking in this movie. I wish it had more. It really has almost no music in it, and I think music is great for adding to that creepy aspect. I guess it didn't necessarily need it. They probably didn't want it in there because they just wanted the silence to be creepy in and of itself. But I think it would have benefited from a nice creepy soundtrack instead of just kind of having nothing. Ninth is directing. Now, directing is kind of the catch-all of the last 8 elements. I think a director is in charge of how all of those go, how smoothly the movie runs. And honestly, with this being Frank's 4th film and the previous films that he did, I really just think he kind of fell off. He didn't do that great here. He has filmed The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Majestic. And I think compared to those, this movie is just not that great. It does okay. There's a couple decisions that he made that I just did not like the camera work. I just didn't love it. There's a couple things I wish he would have done different, but it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It's an okay movie, and he does an okay job. I just think with his background, he should have done better. 10th is time. Does it stand the test of time? Now, this movie is about 17 years old, and honestly, the only reason it even stands the test of time is one, that it is a good idea, but really, it's the ending. And you know what I'm talking about. That ending is a gut wrencher. It hurts. I will never forget this movie because of that ending. And it's one of the reasons I really love it. I love the ending. It's a reason I'll watch this movie again at some point. But that's kind of it. It is pretty forgettable. I just think the only reason it stands the test of time is because of that ending. Okay, so the review aspect. Rotten Tomatoes critics section gives it a 73%. The audience section gives it a 65%. And IMDb gives it a 71%. I think I agree more with the Rotten Tomatoes audience of 65%. It's just not that good of a film. The idea and the ending are really what pull it, but it's just not that great. It's just okay. Some of the acting saves it. The idea saves it. So I can't really give it a super high rating. Now for the rankings, I've never done a movie in 2007 or the 2000s, so it's going to be first. However, for all time, it's going to fall to Toy Story and cinematography at second. Toy Story is just a better movie all around. It's more creative. I think it is a better representation of film as an art than The Mist. Now, for entertainment, it's also going to fall second. Toy Story is just a better movie. I would rather sit down and watch Toy Story before I watch The Mist. Now, that's all I have for The Mist. So, if you've got a movie you want me to watch, make sure you comment. Otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.